being patient as we arriving a few minutes late. I will now entertain a motion to go into open session.
Madam Chair, I move that we go remain in open session and adopt certification of closed session.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries.
Certification of closed session. Whereas the Dinwiddie County School Board has convened a closed session on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas paragraph 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dinwiddie County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only such business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the school board. Dr. Elaine Pearson, District 1.
I certify.
Dwayne Walker, District 2.
I certify.
Barbara Pittman, District 3.
I certify.
Mary Benjamin, District 4.
I certify.
Jason Brown, II, District 5.
I certify.
Madam Chair, all certify.
Thank you. At this time, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Golson, are there any amendments to the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And the motion carries. Recognitions.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Businesses large and small, corporate-owned or family-run, play a key role in supporting our communities and our local schools. They contribute to our school divisions in many ways, including helping schools with in-kind or financial contributions, donating to scholarship programs, supporting extracurricular activities, offering internship opportunities, volunteering in schools, and sponsoring field trips. This type of support is invaluable. Local businesses have the power to shape the community's attitudes about the public schools, and the VSBA Business Honor Roll is a way for local school divisions to recognize local businesses for their support, especially as schools face increasing budget uncertainty. The Business Honor Roll helps divisions say thank you to these businesses for their vital contribution. This school year, we had numerous submissions. A full listing was submitted and posted in the latest edition of the Dinwiddie County Chronicle, which was mailed to every Dinwiddie citizen's home last month. All 151 business partners will receive a special mailing this month. Among those 151 business partners that were submitted to our central office, 3 businesses moved on to earn the VSBA 2024 Business Honor Roll recognition on behalf of Dinwiddie County Public Schools. Those 3 businesses were Todd Williams, contractor, Slade and Sons Construction, and Old Hickory Farms Incorporated. Fellas, would you please come forward? Stand up here for me, please. We want to thank you for your commitment to the students in Dinwiddie County. We want to also thank you for collaborating together to upgrade our athletic department's building structures. We could not have done it without you. And so I'm going to read your certificate. And this certificate is presented by the Virginia School Board Association, and it is awarded to each of you. The Dinwiddie County School Board expresses appreciation for your ongoing support of the community's public schools and the students. It is signed by Dr. Cardell Patillo and Gina Patterson, who is VSBA's executive director. And as I shared with you earlier, your businesses are highlighted on the VSBA website. I looked it up today, and so I'll make sure to send you the link so you can see that as well. You are listed with other businesses from all over the state of Virginia that have supported all of the districts that fall within that area. Fellas, would you like to say something? Oh, you come up, step to the right.
Thank you so much for that award. That's really exciting. And we took on this project, Todd Williams and Randy and myself. We're the construction committee, but we really did it out of our hearts. We really wanted to see our sports teams have a nice facility and somewhere to go and really be something to be proud of. And we feel like we accomplished that with the support of a lot of people that we mentioned at the ribbon cutting ceremony. But we had two significant games on the softball side this year. We had senior night that we hosted out at the complex, and then also the opening round of the regional tournament. And we won both of those games, and just to see the excitement that was generated around that new building really made it all worthwhile for us. So we also want to thank the school board and Dr. Kerry Weston and Jeff and the team for trusting us with the project. Obviously, we built the new building on your property, and we didn't take that trust lightly. So we want to thank you all for your support throughout the process. But really nice award, and thank you for your recognition and commemorating us for that. So thank you. You guys got anything? I'll just kind of ditto what Chris said, but we didn't go into this project seeking recognition. We went into this project for the good of our sports teams, and there was a lack for several years on the facilities. The bathroom facilities have really been a nice addition to that area. And it was an honor for all of us to participate and see how local businesses came together to support it. And I say that quite often now. People are so busy they don't initiate a lot of things, but if you can get it started, it's amazing the way people are coming together, and it's been really refreshing. So thank you for the recognition also.
I would like to say that I've been around long enough to know what we had before, which was, we used to think it was sufficient, and then as over the years, we realized it really was not sufficient. And it's a wonderful building, and I'm so proud of what it looks like and what it's used for. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that all three of these men, as well as the Slades who aren't here, are Dinwiddie graduates as well. So we appreciate you giving back, and we appreciate your leadership. And I used to tell people when I was in the building that we don't know if we're successful when you're in the building. We know if we've been successful as a community or as an education center later in life. And obviously, you've turned out well and are helping us still. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Thank
if I could add
Certainly.
something, Madam Chair, I just want to acknowledge this. I am a personal beneficiary of the work that you guys did.
That's right.
Not just as a school board member, but as a tennis coach. And so literally 2 years ago, I watched a girl climb out of the trunk of her car after getting dressed because she had nowhere to get dressed. And so this is like night and day. And then to be able to use the restroom without having to climb into a stinky porta-john is amazing. So you guys have really blessed us, and I know that'll be there for many, many years. So thank you.
I think also too, it's there for the community. You know, I think that that's another benefit, that when people are there playing tennis on the weekends or walking that trail, they also have a place to go. I know that our physical education classes are using that. Now they can come across the street without having to either run back across the street to use the restroom from the middle school. And I also would say, Ms. Pittman, to you that they definitely are paying it forward. If you attended graduation, you saw that both of the Everett's children are valedictorian and salutatorian. So I think the next generation is also doing well.
That's
So,
right.
Yes, as well. So Thank you so much for sharing your children with us.
Thank
as
you.
well.
Thank you all
Thank
so
you.
much for what you did for our students.
Yes,
We appreciate it.
Indeed.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Personnel list.
Madam Chairperson, I move that we approve the personnel list as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. And Dr. Weston has an introduction.
Yes, and so it gives me great pleasure I feel like it's interesting to introduce, but you feel like you're already part of our family. I would like to introduce to you Ms. Tench. If you'd like to stand, I'm going to tell you all a little bit about her. So Ms. Tench, we were able to persuade Ms. Tench to leave Sussex and come and join our team last fall. And she came to us as a student support specialist, and she came to us with a great background. She had been the teacher of the year there for a couple of different times in Sussex. She's taught at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. So it brings all of those varied experiences. She has degrees both from Old Dominion University, that was where I went to school as well. She also has, she has a master's degree in literacy and language, which we're very happy to know that, right, with all of the literacy efforts that we have going on. She also has a master's degree from Virginia State University. Of course, I think everybody has some connection to Virginia State University if you live in Dinwiddie. So she has that degree as well. But she is now our new assistant principal on the admin team, or the admin squad, excuse me, at Dinwiddie Middle School. And what's the motto where we're changing the perception to reach greater heights? And I will tell you that I've had the opportunity to watch Ms. Tench in action when she doesn't think people are watching her, and she is exactly who she is when she's with kids privately, that she is with grown people in public. And I just really am so grateful for that. So we're so glad to have you on the team. So congratulations.
Thank you. Consent agenda expenditure reports.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the expenditure reports as they've been presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion carries. Minutes from May 14th and 28th.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the minutes of May 14th, 2024, and May 28th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion carries. In board matters, we start off with HVAC replacements.
Good evening. Hope everybody's doing all right. I wanted to come before y'all today to talk to you about the HVAC upgrades that we're trying to get accomplished at Sunnyside Elementary School. This has been a little bit of a challenge just based on the type of project, the time that we have, and then also, the funding sources that we're having to use that have deadlines. Sunnyside's been on the CIP since 2019. That's not just HVAC. There's been electrical upgrades, lighting upgrades, various renovations that have been on there, and it's been very difficult to get to it. So we'd really like to try to get to it this summer. In order to do that, we did issue a bid package. We put it out, and we received one person tour the facility and 0 bids. And that was in April. So with that, it made it, we had to regroup. So we sat down and talked about it a little bit. And we decided to reach out to 5 local contractors that can do HVAC/electrical work. It's going to take both. And we asked them to give us quotes. In those quotes, we do anticipate 2 or 3 giving quotes on that. We did have these quotes, by the way, will not exceed the $199,999 threshold. We did ask them to have these quotes to us by Friday the 14th. We did get a number of questions today that myself and Mark Probst, our architect, are working on. So we're going to extend that deadline to Monday the 17th at 11 a.m. But what we're asking for is that you allow Dr. Weston to enter this contract should we get a acceptable bid or quote, excuse me. without coming back to the board to seek approval, should it be under the threshold of $200,000. And we're doing this because it's already going to be cutting it very close to the start of school, to where we may even have to finagle it a little bit and, be creative the way we route kids to PE, because they're replacing the HVAC over the gym, which is going to cause them to have to replace some electrical because the electrical work has to be upgraded for the upgraded HVAC. So again, I'm here asking permission that the board allow Dr. Weston to enter into this contract should it not exceed the allotted amount.
$199.
Yep. And certainly I'll answer any questions you may have of this.
Are there any questions of Mr. Walters? If not, we need a motion to allow them to make a contract for the HVAC and other upgrades.
Move that we accept that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Tortoreese?
Good evening. How's everybody?
Well, thank you.
All right. The first trip that I'm here to ask approval for is the FFA Officers Retreat. The officers are looking to travel to McGaysville, Georgia, or Virginia, not Georgia, to participate in a planning and goal-setting retreat for the 24-25 school year. They're going June 29th through July 1st. They're going to stay at an Airbnb. There is a male and a female chaperone in attendance.
Any questions about the officer retreat? If not, we need a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the officer retreat trip. We approve it.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And boys basketball.
Boys basketball would like to travel to Hampton-Sydney College June 18th through the 20th for a skill building and team bonding experience. They'll be staying on campus. Coaches will be there with them.
Any questions about the basketball?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the trip for the boys basketball team to Hampton-Sydney College.
I need a second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Title 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Just 4.
29. Going once, going twice.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
It's always a pleasure to stand before you and talk about many new things, right? that we're all learning together. So this evening there'll be a group presentation about our consolidated grant components and process. And so I do understand that is new to some of us. And so consolidated grant just means we are putting Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 together in a grant. There are different coordinators for each grant, and basically the title grants are about federal funding. School divisions receive federal funding in different areas based on our student enrollment. Each of these areas has different implications and allowable expenses that the coordinators will talk about this evening. And I have a little clicker. Okay. Maybe. It is on. It's not, I don't know if it's a battery thing, Bonnie. I can start talking. Oh, that'll do it. See, that'll do it. Okay. So the process used for this grant, I've just kind of explained that just a little bit. So we have Ms. Valentine, who's our elementary director, who is the coordinator for Title I. Title II and 4 fall under our director of innovation, which is Betty Spires. And then Title III falls under Penny Brooks, and I just can never remember the title exactly. She's the program administrator for early learning and literacy, and EL. The EL population falls under her. So this is definitely a collaborative effort. Work cannot happen in silos. And we all come together, and those are just the coordinators, but we bring a whole team together for this process because we need feedback on the needs of students and staff, right? So with this process, the big part that happens, and I believe we began in February, is the comprehensive needs assessment, and that takes several times coming together in several months. And when I say we look at a lot of data, we look at a lot of data points because you can't just look at one thing. You can't just look at SOL scores. You have to look at a lot of different pieces. So our academic services team comes together. There are surveys that go to staff and to parents about what they feel the needs are in schools and for their students. And then this committee kind of splits into subcommittees to talk about the different grant areas, Title I, II, III, and IV, and the needs of students. So multiple data sources are reviewed. And just so you know, that includes the survey data, it includes SOL scores, it includes PAL scores, but we look at attendance data, discipline data, staff data. We look at the IPAL report about our licensed versus provisionally licensed staff, so a lot of different pieces. Then in developing the grant, basically we take that needs assessment to say, okay, now here's how we can spend this money, what needs to happen with our funding that's going to have the greatest impact on students and staff. And that is what the team really strives to do, is not just say, well, let's just keep doing what we've always done, but to say, what do students need in this moment and what is going to help our students be successful? So each coordinator then kind of works on their piece of that application. And then by the end of May, we had a final draft of really what the grant looks like with measurable objectives and what our goals are going to be and how that money is going to be spent. But I will just say a few things. At this time, we do not have a finalized budget because there are some salary implications that are coming that we need to work in. Also at this time, we are working with a new private school in Dinwiddie on the equitable services process. So what that means is, if we have a private school in the county, we have to notify all of those schools every year, and we do that through letters that we send out about this grant process because they can have access to some of this federal funding. There are certain compliance pieces that they have to provide. So we are working through that process with a school right now. They talk about their needs with us. We have consultation meetings. They had to provide proof of enrollment and just some different pieces. So that part has not been finalized yet. And that could have budget implications. So that's one other reason why the budget is not finalized at this time. However, we will have it finalized prior to July 1st because that is when it is due to the Department of Education. And at that time, we will provide the board and Dr. Weston a copy of that finalized budget piece. So what they will present to you this evening is how we're going to spend the money based on that needs assessment. So each coordinator this evening will talk through that process with you, and then definitely you can ask questions as they go along or at the end of the presentation. So first off this evening will be our Title I coordinator, Ms. Valentine.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Weston. Again, I'm Ms. Valentine, and I will be speaking to you this evening in reference to Title I, Part A. The focus of Title I, Part A, Title I is our largest grant. The focus is to improve basic programs, and as we like to say across the state, and it's referred to across the nation as following the backpack, following the student. So that's the goal of Title I, is to support the needs of students in our school-wide Title I programs. So as it states, the purpose of Title I Part A program is to provide the grant funds to do the following, with the focus on developing, implementing, and evaluating instructional programs, while also improving student outcomes district-wide in our Title I schools in the area of literacy, math, and science. Ensuring that all children in Title I school-wide programs have a fair, equal, and significant opportunity to obtain a high-quality education. Also retaining highly qualified staff in alignment with the Virginia Literacy Act, also referred to as VLA, which states that every student in kindergarten through 8th grade will receive core literacy instruction based on the science of reading research and evidence-based literacy practices. Lastly, to strengthen family and community engagement through constructing meaningful activities, events, and opportunities to support all families with a literacy focus. Yes, I have it. Okay, so as Dr. Clay referenced earlier, needs assessment, we like to have feedback from our stakeholders to help guide what are the best ways to spend this money. So we're making sure that it's not a one-sided viewpoint. Our stakeholders were surveyed to gain insight and information that would help inform future Title I programming and practices. The stakeholders that provided the most feedback via the needs assessment were parents. So we do have parent advisory council meetings twice a year, and we not only invite parents and guardians and caregivers, but we also invite community partners. As you've heard me mention in previous presentations, our goal is to service K-12 and even post-secondary, and that takes input from the community as well. And so our parents primarily, but also community members, have requested that funds be utilized for the following: more parent university sessions, workshops and information sessions. Requested topics include preparing students for SOLs and other assessment testing, positive communication between parents and students, and also social emotional learning, as well as information on bullying prevention and reading to promote a love of literacy. Parents shared that they appreciated the Virginia Reads One Book initiative and activities, as well as the Parent Advisory monthly book and resource boxes. Parents expressed appreciation and interest in the school markets, as well as the Little Free Libraries. So now we will get into Title I, Part A, funds allowable and planned uses for those funds. Dinwiddie County Public School proposes to use Title I, Part A funding for the following: to fund 6 supplemental reading positions. As you are aware, with all of the initiatives coming from the state level, specifically the Virginia Literacy Act, a lot of our focus, the majority of our focus, will be on literacy, as is necessary. To be good readers, we also need students to be good writers and vice versa. And when they're good readers and they have a strong literacy background, they are prepared for college and career readiness, which is what we want. So we want to put our money where our mouth is and invest in those efforts. So we will employ 4 reading interventionists in our Title I schools. We will be also adding 2 additional reading specialists. And what that means is we actually have 1 reading interventionist that has retired, so we have to fill that position, and another one who is transferring to another position. So both of those vacancies are open. To ensure that we're aligning with best practices and aligning with Virginia Literacy Act, we are requesting that their replacements have a reading specialist endorsement, just to be forward thinking. So that's where the 2 additional reading specialists will come from. Also, to fund a behavior specialist position, which is a new position. We like to think that, again, we're forward thinking and that we are looking at the data. Data is meant to be a flashlight and not a hammer. So we're paying attention to the increase in behavioral needs as it relates to, we know post-COVID, a lot of our students are struggling. Sometimes due to no fault of their own, it's the environment that we're living in right now. So how do we meet the students where they are? So our goal is to hire a behavior specialist with necessary funding to ensure that it's someone who is highly qualified in that area and who has a clinician background. Again, that person would support social emotional efforts, but also support, in addition to our students, supporting our staff and administrators on teaching them best practices to support the needs of our students. Also fund the Title I lead literacy interventionist. She helps to, again, support our Title I schools, ensuring alignment and best practices with Virginia Literacy Act, but also helping to somewhat coach our teachers and our administrators on those initiatives and endeavors. Also to fund the Family and Community Engagement Specialist position, which is also known as our FACE position. Everyone knows her. She is highly active in the community and with community engagement events. So we're going to continue to employ that, but also switching it a bit to ensure that there's a hyper focus on literacy, a hyper focus on engagement versus involvement. How do we engage our parents in supporting their students in the area of literacy? Also funding EL tutors at the elementary level to support our newcomers and our PL1s, which are our proficiency level 1 students. And to also utilize remaining funds to support the required set aside for family engagement, professional development, our homeless population, and supplemental materials. All in all, going back to what I stated earlier, the goal for Title I is to support the backpack, to support the student, to follow the student. And as you can see, in addition to instructional and literacy initiatives, the goal is to support our most vulnerable populations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Martina Bullock Seaborn. I am the grants coordinator. I'm standing in for Betty Spires today to discuss Title II Part A. So the purpose for Title II Part A is to increase student achievement consistent with challenging state academic standards, improve the quality effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leaders, increase the number of teachers, principals, and other school leaders who are effective in improving student academic achievement in schools, and to provide a low-income minority students greater across the effective teachers, principals, and other school leaders. So Title II funds, how we plan to use it. So we propose to use the funds by providing funding for attend conferences, outside presenters, evidence-based practices, professional development, funding the teachers' evaluation program, tuition assistance, reimbursement for teachers that wants to go to school to get additional licensure and hard-to-staff areas, and additional license for them that's seeking endorsements. Provide financial support for programs offering alternative route, provide stipends for our teacher mentors, and supporting our recruiting events for our teachers.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Penny Brooks, and part of the roles that I fulfill is to be the Title III grant coordinator. And that's the grant that we don't get a whole lot of money, so we spend it very wisely, and we get help from our friends like Title I. So Title III is the grant that supports our English learners. It's also for immigrant children and youth. We do not receive funding for immigrant children and youth, but we do receive funding for English learners. And what that is for is really to target student achievement academically for our English learners, as well as English acquisition, learning English. So we definitely want them to be college and career ready with reading and math. We want them to graduate on time, which sometimes presents a challenge for us. We've been doing really well with that lately, but we get newcomers that come to us at the high school level, and sometimes they have interrupted education. So we work really hard to ensure they have the credits that they need to graduate. We also use Title III funds to support ensuring that we have ESOL certified teachers, and that we provide professional development for those teachers and for general education teachers to support those English learners in their classrooms. So like I said, we don't have a whole lot of money, so we spend it very wisely. We make sure that we purchase instructional materials, especially to support them in what we consider a LEAP, and that's a language instruction educational program. So we've purchased items in the past and will in the future to support our newcomers and our SLIFE students. SLIFE students are students with limited and or interrupted formal education. Again, we provide professional development opportunities, not only for our ESOL certified teachers, but for our staff, our general education staff. We promote family engagement activities. We hold events to invite our families out to help support them with supporting their children with academics. And this year we set aside a little bit of money to support the L tutor at the secondary level. We've been very fortunate in the last several years that through CARES funding, we've been able to have a secondary L tutor and several elementary tutors. So Title I is going to support our elementary L tutors and our Title I schools, and then we'll use a little bit of money to support our secondary level students. Back to Martina.
Back. So I'm here to do Title IV Part A. So Title IV Part A is to provide the grant funds to improve our students' academic achievement, increasing the capacity of states and schools and local communities, to provide all students with access to well-rounded education, improve student conditions for student learning, and to improve the technology for our academic achievement. So we use these funds to support our responsive classroom initiative, provide outside mentoring services for mental needs for the students, the contract coaching to support the science instruction, and we added dual enrollment opportunities and provide funding for technology training. So at this time, we are requesting approval for our grants and any questions you may have.
Any board members, do you have questions of any of those who presented to us?
I don't have any questions, however, but this is the same, grant that we have gotten this grant before, this is, and, okay, well, then they have used it before, and we still need it and more. Madam Chair, I move, if there are no more questions, I move that we accept the proposal coming from the consolidated grant group.
Need a second. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate your information. We know that's a big undertaking, but it is also a big part of what we do in education, is to serve all those specific groups. The literacy plan.
Yes. You do have a few of them.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. So this evening, Ms. Brooks and I are going to present our Dinwiddie County Public Schools Literacy Plan. I do believe you have a copy of the template of that plan. I will say, we're gonna make it prettier. We're working on that. This is the template that the state provided. So VDOE provided a template and said, use this template. Because there are specific sections we had to have. Every division in the state has to have this. So the template is exactly what was provided. We are working now on the public view of it, just looking a little more easy to read, flow a little better, and include some pieces from the Virginia Literacy Act playbook to really explain to parents what this entails. So we could stand before you this evening and talk about this for hours, but I don't think everybody in the audience would be happy to be here for hours. But I will say it is a lot of information that we're going to chunk into a short presentation. But if the board would like more information, we can certainly sit with you in a work session and really talk through all the pieces of new English standards, the Virginia Literacy Act. You know, it is a lot of information, but we believe very firmly, and I will stand on this all day long with teachers and administrators, this is the right work for students. We had the opportunity to go to a symposium yesterday with VDOE about new English and math standards, and I learned so much just from sitting and listening, and it's exciting. So I do want to say that, though it is a lot of new things with this and a lot of changes to our mindset on how we teach literacy, it is exciting, and I can't wait to come back in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and talk about the growth our students are going to see because of this change and this shift. Very exciting stuff. Okay, I have the clicker. All right. So the Virginia Literacy Act, as you know, was passed in 2022 by the General Assembly. It is law. And each component of the Literacy Act is written into code. It's not all in one place. You've got to search through different places, but it's different pieces that are actually written into law that must be implemented by every school division in Virginia for the 24-25 school year. And it really is just about improving literacy outcomes for our students, for our young people. And VDOE is supporting divisions in different ways. I am not a slide reader, so I'm not going to read all this to you. But basically, these are the big 5 components of the Literacy Act, kind of summarized. It is about every student in grades K through 5 receiving core instruction from a vetted or an approved resource that is based on the science of reading. So VDOE put out a list of these resources, and every school division had to adopt one. We are in a great position because guess what? We already had one from the list, HMH, that we were using. The wonderful thing too is, though this is K-5, really our plan is about K-12. So we're a little ahead of the game. We're working to be ahead of the game. Our middle school students next year will also receive core instruction from HMH based on the science of reading. So we're very excited about that. The second piece is about families having access to resources. We are, as part of this, going to create a literacy page on our website with resources for parents. The wonderful thing is VDOE and the Virginia Literacy Partnership are creating a lot of those resources for us that we can link for parents on this page. Every teacher will use that evidence-based literacy curriculum, and they'll be trained on evidence-based literacy instructional practices. We started that this year. We also started more training, even though we've had HMH, we started training teachers a little more this year on the use of that and how to really use it. We want to support teachers through this process. That's very important. Every reading specialist, which I do want to say, we already met the standards for this with reading specialists. So when Ms. Valentine talked about more reading specialists, that's on top of what the state requires. So our goal is to provide excellence for every student every day. So reading specialists will work with teachers and building administrators to work on student reading plans. So any student that is not meeting, I don't want to say the benchmark, Penny.
It's identified as high risk.
That's identified as high risk based on the new screener that's coming out next year, VALS, will have to have a student reading plan, which is the right thing to do. And guess what? We were already doing that with a different template with our student success process. If students were not meeting that benchmark, we were already trying to put interventions in place for the student. So those will be monitored throughout the year, and interventions will be put in place for students. And then, of course, the last piece, which we're presenting to you this evening, is every division must have a literacy plan that talks about all of these different components.
Okay, so there are so many acronyms you're going to get. We've already decided that when we launch this page for the public, we will have a glossary because there are so many acronyms. So you're going to hear SOR, you're going to hear EBLI, you're going to hear HQIM. So what the Virginia Literacy Act is really focusing us in on is research, scientifically based reading research. So now everything we do moving forward is ensuring that we're providing that training to our teachers, because we have veteran teachers that have been doing an amazing job for years. And we're not saying we've been doing it wrong, because, I've been at this for quite some time too. But it's really given them the tools, which is our core curriculum, which has been approved by BDOE, that's based in that scientific research with complex text, explicit instruction, and given them the tools that they need to ensure that students have what they need for instruction. So really, that's what the science of reading is. You'll hear a lot of people talk about that. I don't know if you've seen this. This is called, is it Scarborough's Reading Rope. We were so excited because yesterday we saw a writing rope. We got really excited, and they've taken the new standards and they've linked them to each of those components. So what this graphic really shows you is that, yes, teaching reading is based on science, and it does take rocket science. We used to say children just learn to read by being exposed. Well, that's not the case. They really need explicit instruction, not only with decoding, but also with language. So if you see, the top part is the language comprehension. And when we think about that, we think about a child's background knowledge. We think about the vocabulary that they have. We think about the syntax and the structure of sentences and just their knowledge of literacy components. And you entwine that with the phonological awareness. What do the sounds make? The sounds and the phonemes, and putting them together to make words and to make meaning of words. So once we get all that right, then we will have very skilled readers. Again, we talked about the Virginia Literacy Act. You'll see that VLA. That was enacted in 2022. It began by targeting kindergarten through third grade, and then they increased it kindergarten through fifth grade. As Dr. Clay stated, our focus is K-12, and based on this literacy plan that you have the copy of that we have to submit by July 1, even though they're telling us that students in grades 4 through 8 do not have to be included in our plan at this time, we included them because we know that we have work to do there, and we do want to identify those students at high risk, and we want to put those measures in place to ensure that they're successful with reading. So we created a committee based on, we have teachers on that committee, so we had teachers' input, we had administrators, Mr. Garnes, Mrs. Colbreth, we had division leaders, Mrs. Valentine, our reading specialist. So this committee came together to create this plan. I was like, you want me to keep going?
And I just want to say one thing that's written in the new standards, because the new standards are a piece of this, and they are more rigorous, and that's why it's exciting. But one thing they said to us yesterday that's also written in the new standards is this whole thing about the Virginia Literacy Act and new standards in science of reading is about raising the floor for students and removing the ceiling. And it's really about making sure, even if I'm reading on a first grade level, I need to be exposed to fourth grade text. Like, raise the ceiling, raise your expectations, and it's about complex text and a variety of complex text. So again, we're kind of excited about it. But the components are listed here. Again, these are the components that are in the template you have, and these are the pieces that every division has to have that with the template that's provided. So the vision, which we will read to you, selecting those high quality instructional materials, ensuring that it's evidence-based reading research training for teachers. We'll talk about what that's going to look like. Monitoring student assessment and progress. How are we assessing our division level progress? And then how are we engaging families, those parents, caregivers, and communities and community in this work? So this is the one slide I will read to you. Okay, this is our vision. And we had 21 members on our team. I don't know if you've ever tried to get 21 people to come to a consent. It's the struggle is real because they all have great opinions. Like, it was fun work, but it took a while because, you know, they all have great ideas and they are excited about the work and invested in students. So literacy is a fundamental human right, and the productive struggle of learning to read and write is a healthy process that must be taught. Dinwiddie County Public Schools is committed to creating a thriving community of effective listeners, speakers, readers, writers, and critical thinkers who understand the power of literacy within our schools, communities, and world. To this end, we will provide all students with direct instruction utilizing high-quality instructional materials based on the science of reading research, data-driven, skill-based, and ongoing support to address the needs of students, and lastly, continuous, data-informed, and targeted educational training. That's such a key piece to instructional staff across all content areas, not just English teachers, to foster literacy-rich environments. So part of this, when we get into the training, every classroom's a literacy classroom. So how are we supporting teachers in that effort? So the first piece with high-quality instructional materials, I'll turn it over to Penny for that.
Okay, so HQIM, high-quality instructional materials. These are materials that, again, are aligned to the science of reading research. And these materials are the ones that are designed for our teachers and our students that have the skills and the complex text that they require. And we're, like Dr. Clay said, we're really in a great place because we've had HMH since 2019. And now we're in a place where we are really honing in on providing that training and providing teachers with exactly what they need to utilize within the components of HMH so that they are following a scope and sequence. And the children are being exposed to these skills and they build upon each other as they continue to go through the grades. So our high quality instructional materials for kindergarten through 5th grade is HMH. That is our core. That is a VDOE vetted approved program. 6 through 8, that's HMH into literature. What VDOE also did is they came out with an approved list of supplemental materials and intervention materials. As you'll see in our literacy plan, in this moment in time, we're not selecting any supplemental materials because we want to ensure that we're using our core with fidelity and integrity. And then we'll see, once we've used it with integrity and fidelity, how our students are performing, and if we feel like it's lacking something, we need to supplement.
Were we already using HMH at the middle level or just at the elementary level?
Well, actually, we had it at the middle school years ago, so we didn't have to adopt a new curriculum. We just had to update. Yes, ma'am. So then our interventions that we are going to utilize with all-in tutoring, VDOE gave us licenses for Lexia for Core 5, K through 5 students, and Power Up for 6 through 8. So what we've done is we've increased our license to make sure that any child that requires that intervention has access to it. And then we're also looking at the interventions with Linda Mood Bell. One of those is Seeing Stars, and the other one is Visualizing and Verbalizing. These are Orton Gillingham products that will provide targeted teachers with training that if a child requires that intervention, then we'll have that as a tool for us. Our evidence-based reading research training, again, we're ahead of the curve because in 2019, we started LETRS training. That's another acronym, LETRS, Language Essentials for Teachers for Reading and Spelling. So we started with a plan in mind to have all K2 teachers trained. This is a course that they receive 90 credits for. It takes them an entire year to complete. Our goal was to have K2 completed by 2005. Well, with the Virginia Literacy Act and it being required that we provide training for our staff, we've increased that to all K5 staff will be trained by the end of 2025. There's administrators, our building principals, assistant principals, some of us up here at the division level. We're going through letters for administrators. I started it. I'm already excited about it. I'm like, it's good stuff. Found out today there's actually one for early childhood. So I'm like, oh, great, preschool teachers, yay. VLP is Virginia Literacy Partnership. They came out with Value Series. That is on a public site, so anyone has access to that. We started with the Value Series last November when we provided training for elementary teachers in science of reading research and explicitly based instruction. So we'll utilize those. We have trainings planned for DCPS and continuous training for our new English standards of learning. Because we've selected to be a letters division, all of our K5 teachers who are letters trained or going through letters will have to complete one module on the VLA implementation, and that's developed by UVA. And then our teachers at the middle school level, 6 through 8, all of them will be trained in these modules. Our ELA teachers, which is our English language arts teachers, theirs will be more in depth. And then depending on certifications, math, science, history, theirs is like a 1 to 2 hour per month training. But all of these modules are coming to us from UVA.
So the next section is about monitoring student assessment. So there is a chart that you have in the template that just talks about the assessments that will be provided to students. So that first one, vowels, is replacing pals. That is something we have to do. I know, all the letters. And it'll happen for K-3 students beginning, middle, and end of the year. And so you see who's responsible for that piece. And then PALS Plus is something we have been using just for 4th and 5th grade students. This year, at the end of the year, we did use it for 6th and 7th grade students to get an idea of their reading, where they were reading and their level. And so next year, students in grades 4 through 8 will have PALS Plus at the beginning and end of the year, which will help the 2 reading specialists at the middle school and reading specialists in elementary know how to best meet the needs of students. So students that will be in need of that reading plan based on their vowels or PALS Plus score may receive other assessments as part of that progress monitoring cycle. These are shorter assessments that really are about, okay, we're doing this intervention. Are you making progress? Do we need to do something differently, or is this working? So at the division level, we will do a multitude of things as well. We had already begun classroom walkthroughs. That's something, we have been doing to really find our work. How do we need to better support administrators and teachers? What is the training that is needed? So moving forward, there will be a consistent literacy walkthrough tool where we're looking for those evidence-based practices, the science of reading, the components of that HQIM. Again, it's not about anything the teacher is doing incorrectly. It's about our work. How are we implementing this well so that teachers can integrate all these things into their instruction? And then again, how do we support them differently if there's a different type of support needed? The literacy planning cycle, which is a cycle that has been presented by the Department of Education, which is really about that collaborative planning and really lesson preparation, is what we're going to call that. How are you preparing to instruct students? The delivery, we're through walkthroughs and with principals and assistant principals, they're looking at that delivery. And then there's that feedback cycle where principals and maybe reading specialists and us sit with teachers in grade level meetings and talk about what we have seen. And they get to give feedback on what's going well, what's not going well before they start that planning cycle again. So that immediate feedback on what's happening in the classroom. Reviewing that data. At this level and with principals, data analysis meetings at the school and the division level are so important. And then the review of those student reading plans that reading specialists will create in collaboration with teachers and administrators. Those will need to be reviewed to know the progress students are making. So on this slide, it's the parent and community engagement piece. There are a lot of pieces to this. And so in the plan, you see 2 charts. One of them is larger than the other. But the first part of the community engagement or the parent engagement is about how are we helping parents understand the reading plans that we have to do. So it's creating those systems of how we talk to parents about them, how we meet with them, and how we develop that plan in collaboration. We don't do that in isolation. The parent has to be a part of that process because we also have to give tools to parents to help students. It's about ensuring every family, again, has access to those resources we talked about. And then at the beginning of the year, conducting some type of literacy assembly at each school for the parents and caregivers so they understand the process and the why, and then they know how to help their children at home.
Okay, the next part of the plan that you will see is what is just building our partnerships and what is our plan for communicating all of this information, because it's a lot, to parents in a way that they understand what's going on. So part of, Dr. Clay mentioned, we plan to have a division literacy page. We plan to include information on our social media. Part of that plan is with us being here tonight, presenting it to our school board and division leaders. We'll have newsletters. We plan for our family and community engagement specialists to really be hyper-focused this school year on providing those opportunities for family engagement. So really teaching them how to best support their child within the home. We talked about having quarterly literacy nights at each school and having, one of the things we're really working towards is systematic changes and being consistent across the system. So when we're looking at those quarterly literacy events at the schools, we want our students to have basically the same framework, and we're providing the same information, because we all know our parents at ballparks, you know, in church, at events, they all talk, so we want to have some consistency there. We talked about, you know, our different populations, our Title I students, our students with exceptional needs, our English learners, our advanced and gifted learners, making sure that we're trying to hit all of our populations to provide parents with information that they need to support their child with wherever they are in their literacy development. We talked about reading buddy groups. This was a really neat idea, being formed between our secondary students and our elementary students. You know, we do this a little bit now because we have some of our athletes come down to our elementary levels and read to our students, but having that more systematic and involving other groups of students along with the athletes. The literacy incentive plan at each school, our schools do a great job now of coming up with different ways to provide incentives to children to encourage them to read. And then we have a multitude of community partnerships. We're really blessed. We have United Way, we have Mo Lila, we have Touchstone. We're actually exploring now, I don't know if you've ever heard of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. So we're exploring bringing that now to Dinwiddie County, and through that program and through contributions from community partnerships, every child birth through age 5 would receive a free book a month being mailed to them. Yes, so we're really excited about that. Hopewell has started it. It was in the news, and they've reached out to provide us with some information. So that's exciting. Okay, that is a lot of information we know about our literacy plan and all of our efforts. Does anyone have any questions for us at this time?
Well, I have a question and a sort of a concern that I'm sure is not a concern, but I hear the excitement and your buy-in, and I'm excited for you. And I am hoping that will.
We have to be the cheerleaders.
Yes, you do.
Carry the banner.
And I'm hoping that will, you know, cross over and spark the staff. Change is hard sometimes for staff. And it's a lot of it. Yes. And I'm hoping, you know, you asked a question about halfway through that. It was, you know, is this working? And I'm sitting here thinking, the plan is being passed to us, or the state is saying we will do this, and this. And so do we have any information that somebody did something similar somewhere else and was it working?
Sure. I mean, we can, I think, both speak to that. So there, I mean, it is research-based.
Yes.
So I think there is a compelling body of research about this. And I will say Virginia is not the only state that's in this process of going to evidence-based literacy instructional strategies and the science of reading. So part of the research is just about how reading is being taught. So one of the pieces that we, you know, learned yesterday with research is about the use of complex text, and they showed graphs and, you know, the research behind teaching based on complex text, which HMH has, versus just teaching skills in silos with worksheets and cold reads, which is how I was trained, Ms. Pittman, right? I mean, that is the conditions that, you know, that's how we were conditioned to teach. But the research would say that doesn't have the same effects that using that science-based instruction has. Another study they did was the baseball study that they showed us that Ms. Brooks already knew about. I had not heard that, about building background knowledge, which part of this, you know, part of the science of reading, that is what they do. But they talked about students who had background knowledge actually outperformed students who were super skilled readers.
Right.
Because of the background knowledge.
That goes to those life experiences.
Right. So do you want to?
Well, one thing I want to say, and we're excited, and we are excited, but we're also very realistic because we know that there's so much coming at classroom teachers right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can give them all the tools there are, but we can't expect them to embrace all of it all at once. So we're even having conversations now like, what's going to be our focus? Like, we can't fix or fine tune everything all at once.
Right.
So we're going to have to go in steps, and it's really going to be about building capacity within our building administration, because they need the training also,
Right.
and then just supporting them and supporting our teachers along this path, because we know there's new standards, there's new screening tools, there's new requirements based on the Virginia Literacy Act. When we talk about reading plans for Title I, we were doing plans with students. But now it's that piece of getting that parent engagement into there. So I think we are excited, and we know it is the right work, but we also know we have to support all of our teachers, because they're the ones that are going to make it happen.
That's right.
Right.
And the other thing that I was going to say, in over time, over the last couple of years, I've had veteran long-term teachers say to me, we, when I say we, the educational community, not we, the Dinwiddie community, but we, the educational community, has killed the love and joy of reading with the specific approach that we have.
Approach.
And so I just want to say, while we're doing all this, if we can get that love and joy of reading
We
back
agree
in
with
there,
you.
I would be eternally
That's
grateful.
part of our vision.
Yes,
That's part of the
ma'am.
vision.
Thank you.
Hey, we agree with you 100%. And it's interesting you say that, because when we started working on curriculum, we talked to teachers on that team about, what are the barriers? That was one of the barriers that teachers said loud and clear. How do we get kids to love reading again?
Right.
But I think it is the raising the floor and removing the ceiling. It is part of this work about, let's be in text, let's be in books, let's build background knowledge so students enjoy it. And, it is going to be a shift, Ms. Pittman, and we talked about that today. We want to support teachers. The teacher is what matters the most. We can have the best resource in the world, but the person delivering it
Yes.
matters.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have got to figure out, one, how we support our administrators and build that capacity, but two, what do teachers need? We have to be intentional and strategic about this. And yes, we're excited, but we have to get teachers excited about it too. And our hope is, and my belief, I will say, once we get into this and they see some results from students, that is what it will take.
Yes.
And it's not that teachers aren't working hard. Teachers work hard. It is different than when I taught. My sister still teaches, and so we have a lot of conversations when I'm on the way home. Teaching is the most challenging yet most rewarding field there is. I always believe, and I will stand on this forever, that it's the most important profession. We want teachers to love what they do. And I know many teachers feel like this takes away their autonomy, and we understand that, but I think it gives them the tools they need, and once we get into it and really help them, I believe they are going to find that it's helpful just to have this laid out for them. And then my word is they put their teacher flair to it, because the resource is only as good as the person delivering it.
That's right.
So we want to build some excitement in teachers. I know right now it feels overwhelming. Hey, we'll be honest, sometimes we feel that too. But again, I always have to go back to what is best for kids and how do we continue to improve? So in places where there are great teachers, how do we continue to get better? And I think that is really what this is all about. But it's going to be a process. It's complex change, and that is a process that we have to help people through. So I think that is I'm going to use the word burden in a good way, but that's the burden we have as leaders, is to figure it out together and how we roll it out in just a very strategic way. So I appreciate that feedback, and it is something that we're thinking through.
But thank you, and I
Yes.
appreciate your enthusiasm and willing to recognize that those things are going to hit us in the face as we move forward.
It's challenging.
Yes.
And I think too,
challenging.
you've given the county a head start by already having so much of this already. That transitional year of moving from this to this is always a super challenge.
Sure.
But you've already done that first step. So hopefully, those who have worked with it will be encouraging to those who have to learn how to do it now.
Right. That's
It's the same thing with the training, the letters training. Those that have gone through it, was it hard? Yes. Was it one more thing that was time consuming? Yes. But are they appreciative of going through that course because it's improved their instructional practice? We had teachers in grades 3 through 5 reaching out to us. When do we get it? So we have those folks out there, and the rest of them, we're just gonna keep supporting.
I kind of want to, I think, reiterate Ms. Pittman's last point, the joy of reading, because I feel like a lot of this plan revolves around resourcing the teachers and helping the teachers to get excited about it.
Sure.
But I just be transparent. Most of this is over my head. So I'm trying really hard to understand.
But you're a dad, right?
Yes, and the acronyms, you're exactly right. The
There's a lot of
acronyms.
them.
I still haven't figured out what HMH.
And then you got HQIM.
Yeah, I know that one. High quality.
HMH is our Harcourt Mifflin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just the name of the company. Yeah.
It's basically our
Houston
facial
Mifflin
program.
Harcourt.
My point is, though, I don't think it matters how excited we get the teachers about this if the kids aren't excited
That's right.
about it. And for me personally, and I'm just speaking from personal experience, I hated reading as a young person. And I can tell you that all throughout my educational experience, from grade school all the way through postgraduate, I did everything I could to avoid reading or to find the shortcut through the reading. But I can tell you that since I've graduated from college, I've read more than I ever imagined I would, because I started reading books I enjoyed as opposed to
right.
assigned curriculum or whatever. And so I think part of the plan should involve finding a way not just to make the teachers excited about it,
good.
but to make the students excited about reading. Because if they're excited about reading, they'll do it on their own. We won't even have
Absolutely.
to get them there. But I'm going to look at this some more just to try to understand the
Well, and
science of
again,
reading.
if we need to sit and talk about this like in a work session, we are more than happy to do that, because it is like information overload.
Yes.
It is a lot, and
It
so
is.
we're more than happy to break some things down for you a little better if we need
I'm
to.
impressed that you guys, it's impressive how much information you've processed here.
Well,
But
we're living it a little bit.
A little bit, a lot of it.
but I do thank you for the work you've put in on it. So.
Yes.
And
do
we
thank you.
appreciate that feedback. We would agree. We want students to be excited about reading. And I think that does start with teachers being excited, but
Yes.
then it's how do we get books in front of them that they enjoy, and there's ways to do that. Teachers will have to use this core curriculum and the stories there, but there's opportunities with read alouds and with small group reading time and individual reading time where we can definitely get things in the hands of students that they enjoy.
Right.
I'll just give a little personal parent moment. My child went through Dinwiddie schools, and I'm a proud parent. Number one, I went to public school, but I'm a proud public school parent. And Gabe had great teachers in Dinwiddie, and there's many of them that he'll remember forever. But one second grade teacher, he didn't love reading, but he loved trains. So you know what she did? She found me books about trains, and she was just so intentional with him, and it just grew a love of reading for him.
Yeah.
And she even gave him incentives that dealt with trains. So I say that to say that teacher still teaches here and is a great teacher, and we have great teachers who do try to do those things. But we take that feedback and we can brainstorm some ways. How do we continue to build that joy of reading for students? And I do just want to say we have great teachers.
Yes.
And we know it's challenging, and we care about teachers, and it makes me a little emotional because we want to support them through this, to help them improve, to be the best they can be, to help our students be the best they can be. It's so important. It's important work. Any other questions or feedback?
Yeah, I had 2 questions myself and then a few comments. I wrote things down, so bear with
Okay.
me. I'm gonna read it for them.
And I'm taking notes too as y'all say things.
So in the beginning of the presentation, it was mentioned that the listed resources available to families will be listed on the website. I was wanting to know if we have hands-on tangible materials just for families. Is it not on?
They can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I don't know if it's on or off. I'll speak a little louder. But yeah, just for families that, whether it's, they don't have good internet access in the county, or maybe they're moving and
It is a great question. It's also one that as a reading team we discussed, because what do we do for our families that do not have access? Part of the Virginia Literacy Act is that we must have those online resources available and accessible by all families. What does that mean for a family? Do I go to Starbucks and get on the Wi-Fi? Do I go to the library? But then we know we're going to send home that hard copy stuff. We're gonna have these events where we're gonna show them and teach them and share those resources with them. So great question. We're already on it.
I know the second question that I had is later on in the literacy plan, the physical copy. It says that 6th through 8th students, so 6th grade through 8th grade students will participate in a literacy screener at the beginning and end of the year. I guess this would probably be geared more towards you, Ms. Brooks, but what would that look like for students that are like in our EL program? I know that they already have like their own screeners, but.
Well, it's two different things. So the screener that English learners have, there's two. There's a screener when they first enroll for us to identify if they are in need of direct English learner services. And then the WIDA access test that they take in the spring, January, February, that determines what their their English level is in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So I'm really excited about the core program that we're gonna have because that's really gonna help them in those 4 areas. And there's a component in there that's just for English learners. So that's one thing. Now the PALS Plus, all students will be assessed with that, including our English learners. And I will say that is a huge task at the middle school level because of the multitude of students. So what we did is we band together as a team, Ms. Valentine, myself, the reading specialist, we all went because we just knew we needed that data to determine where instructionally these children needed to be. So the English learners are part of that. Of course, we have newcomers. We have students that have no English ability. So then we know beginning off how much support that we need to provide to them. And those English learner services also support. So they'll have a reading plan if they're in high risk. So they'll get support not only from reading specialists and reading interventionists, but at the middle school level, reading specialists, but also their ESOL teachers. Does that help?
Yeah, it helps a bit.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering that.
Mhm.
The other two things that I had were just comments. I guess feeding off of what had previously been mentioned. I really appreciate on, I think it's the second page of the plan that you list out the goals and what is it that we're looking to achieve and what are we aiming for with the literacy plan. I guess an ask for me would be adding 2 things into the goals, or at least the wording of them. One would be, of course, the excitement of the student, because as had been mentioned before, this plan is geared towards, okay, how are we going to impact the students? What resources are we going to give to school staff and faculty so that we have a very positive impact on the students, but also just maintaining their, excitement, I think would just be, I know that it's implied in the plan, it's implied in the work that you guys have done, but I think explicitly writing it out would just keep it at the forefront of everyone's minds that's involved in the literacy plan. And then also adding, I know there was a comment made earlier about teacher autonomy. If we were to add that to the wording as well, that we're wanting to preserve teacher autonomy with whatever plan it is that we're rolling out in the goals. That way, for teachers that are involved in this plan, they know that, okay, that's something that is being valued, their independence, autonomy, and their ability as a teacher is being valued and being trusted with whatever plans are put out there. So I think, again, it's not that I'm saying that's not what we value. I think it's just I would rather it be explicit more than it is implied. So
And I think our vision for the plan that we want to create based on this template that VDOE required, I think it's gonna be a lot user-friendly, more user-friendly for parents, for teachers, and we're gonna include a lot more information. So I definitely think that's doable. That we make sure we keep those in our mind and we keep that at the forefront.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I do think that we would probably, I know I personally would benefit from having a work session just to dive a little bit more into this. That way, we can have informed conversations with teachers when they ask us for help. So, whatever the rest of the board would think, I'm seeing nodding heads, I think we would all benefit from it.
It's a lot of information. We understand that. And are more than happy to do that.
No, thank you.
Absolutely. Other questions? Okay.
And we do need to,
We'll need approval. So this is due to the Department of Education July 1st. Again, all these components will be in the prettier plan that we put out there, but we're gonna
envision.
but we're gonna add some of these pieces about science of reading and all these acronyms for parents because we need parents to understand, and we want parents to ask questions of this. You know, what is my child learning? How do I help my child at home? What does the science of reading
What are
mean?
they doing with the data?
What are they doing?
How does that impact my kids?
So we just want to be as transparent and user friendly and helpful to parents and caregivers, you know, as we can be. So that will be the goal. But we appreciate all the feedback this evening and are always open to feedback and how we can make it better. So this evening, if there are no more questions, we do need board approval just to present this or submit this to VDOE.
We need a motion and a second so that we can present it to the state.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the literacy plan that's been presented here today.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? Okay. And we appreciate all your
Thank
hard
you so
work
much.
and your enthusiasm.
Thank you.
And one that we will tell you is once VDOE receives this, they're gonna provide us with feedback and
Right.
we resubmit in December.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That will give us a second
Time.
look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a lot to take in, but it is very, very important work. So, stipend study and updates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening to all members of the board and Dr. Weston. I'm here today to present to you an update on the stipend study and the recommendations in which we are seeking your approval. In today's presentation, I'll be reviewing several items for your consideration. I'll be reviewing the background, how we got here today, feedback that we received from the compensation study, our response to that, the data sources that we used for our consideration, challenges and considerations that we found along the way, and lastly, our new structure and recommendations. The school division provides a variety of stipends for academics and athletics. These stipends are either paid by a flat rate or by a percentage rate for the employees and are paid in accordance with the program schedule for the activity. As the scale increased over the past few years, there have been concerns about the long-term sustainability of the program and how we'll be able to proceed in the future. We also had a study by Evergreen Solutions. They looked at our pay scales as well as our stipends. And in the recommendations that they provided to us, they told us in the report that Dinwiddie County Public Schools provides over 50% more stipends than our peers. And they brought up, concerns about us needing to be able to address it for the future, concerns regarding sustainability, concerns regarding equity, as far as how the positions were compensated. But all they did was provide a recommendation to do a deeper dive into how we wanted to address it in the future. They did tell us that they thought that setting a set amount and a set range for the positions with the cap on it would better enable us to manage cost and develop budget projections. So with that information, we decided to proceed in the process of determining what we would do that was in the best interest of Dinwiddie County. But before I move to that slide, I do just want to show you the graph that they provided us in the study from Evergreen, which was when they talked to surrounding schools, as well as schools that had a comparable cost index to us. That was the report of their findings. So this is why you'll see Carroll County there and Manassas there, not necessarily because they're in geographical close proximity, but because we shared a similar or comparable local cost index at the time. So as a result, we wanted to conduct an audit of our stipend offerings, evaluate them to determine if the stipends still needed to be in existence, or should we repurpose them, and evaluate our policies and regulations and implement a consistent approach to the compensation. In response to the feedback, we did develop a stipends committee that was set to be able to look at the stipends holistically and be able to provide feedback for how we should address them going forward. We have representation on the committee from a variety of stakeholders that includes elementary, secondary, exceptional education, athletics, and human resources. So together we were tasked with clarifying what the purpose of our stipends were for, give some insight to you all on the historical context and how we got to where we are today with some of these roles. Do an audit of the existing positions, and of course give you our recommendations. So as a part of our recommendations today, we are offering up a tiered approach for the stipend positions going forward, and also giving you some feedback for how we will implement it and monitor them going forward as well. As a part of that feedback for how we'll monitor it going forward, I did list a couple of things that we will be doing or that we have done to move in the right direction. We did revise the list of the stipends. We revised job descriptions as well. Some of them did not have a job description already, so one was created. And then also put in some criteria for what the manager should be looking for when they evaluate performance and determine if they would be recommending for that stipend or for the person in that role to continue in the position for the following year. Some of the data sources that we used for our consideration was to start the study we received from Evergreen. We also released a supplemental pay survey to employees last year in which they were able to tell us what their stipend role did, or if they were not currently receiving a stipend but they felt they should receive one, they also had an opportunity to submit that information to us as well. In some instances, we did seek guidance from other school divisions to determine how we were aligned with comparable school divisions and comparable positions. And we also reviewed websites, if there was one in existence, for those that may be shared across all school divisions in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I'll go next into reviewing like some of the things that we found when we started diving into the study. And the first part for our basis was just defining what a stipend is. So I will give you the general definition, and then I'll also give you what we have in our regulations as well for how we've said that we would define stipends. The general definition is that a stipend is a periodic payment separate from an annual salary that's paid for services that are related to an educational activity, and that they are typically paid for coaching, extracurricular activities, or other assignments. If you look at our policy, which is GCBB, supplementary pay, the policy specifically states that our supplemental pay should be for activities in conjunction or that are conducted in conjunction with regular classroom curriculum or instructional programs. Now, I did specify that instructional programs, are not considered an extracurricular activity sponsorship. However, we know that the landscape of public education, not just within the United States, but within the Commonwealth of Virginia, has evolved over time, has evolved a lot since the policy was written. And because we're in this competitive landscape, I feel that this is in part why we've come to the position to where we've began to compensate with stipends 50% above our peers. As we know, Dinwiddie County is a rural county. Sometimes we have barriers to attracting talent here, particularly for coaching positions. Also, when we are asking teachers who already have a variety of responsibilities and demands to take up on extra assignments, it requires us to do things that may not have been within our normal scope to be able to incentivize them to complete the work. So what I gathered from considering this information that we receive externally and then looking at, I guess you could say from a microscope perspective of what we're doing here at Dinwiddie County, I believe that our philosophy in regards to the stipend payments is that the compensation extends beyond just the employee's regular salary. The regular salary is one facet of that, but the supplemental pay is our investment in our people. It's our way of showing individuals that we value the work that they are doing. Although we do not have an open checkbook, Christy would not allow me to do that. But we do want to try, whenever it is possible within our means, to be able to provide support to those that are fulfilling those roles, because we realize that in turn, through their support, we are helping to foster the growth and achievement of our students. So the committee also acknowledged that historically, as far as our stipends are concerned, we also did things differently because we wanted to remain a premier place for attracting the most talented coaches and the most talented staff as well. In reviewing our existing structure, just to give you some insight and to give those that are here in the room some insight as well. For this school year, 2023 to 2024, we are projected to pay out over $361,000 in stipends, either by a flat rate or a percentage rate. So, when I stand before you to, say, hey, this is something that we do need to look at long term, here is the reason right here. We did notice that, some positions, how they were calculated, it didn't seem to be consistent with the scope of work. In that sense, either positions were paid by a flat rate or they were paid a percentage based off of the teacher scale. So we have an opportunity to close the gap. And we also have some opportunities to clarify what we are expecting as far as the output that we would expect from a person that is fulfilling that role. So we took a dive into looking at those positions, evaluated them based on the nature and the duties of the position. And a couple of years ago, the board did approve us to only use the 2023 teacher scale for any advancement to the stipends going forward. And that would be our recommendation to you today, that we continue to use that scale as our basis when we place stipends on the scale for those that apply to it. Our new structure that we have provided for your approval today is one that we went over in our working session back in March, I believe it was. And this structure is going to allow us to place all academic and athletic stipends in a tier that more closely aligns with the criteria for the position. I also want to reassure you that in this plan, any existing employees we have will not lose any money. So if the recommendation is that the stipend be paid at a lower amount, they will be frozen at the amount that they previously received. The new structure also allows for us to continue to do the flat rates for those positions that are in academics, and then in athletics, we will continue with the tiers that have a percentage rate that's applied to it. With this new structure, it did take us doing some streamlining of positions, like I said, ensuring alignment. So there were some changes that were made, either moving a position to a tier that was more comparable for the work that was done. In some rare instances, there were positions that were eliminated because we found that they were being paid for in other ways, or, we had two people doing the same duty and getting compensated two different ways for that. But like I said, that is the exception, not the norm. And again, if it is someone returning, then they would be frozen at that rate. Any positions that we still had some questions or concerns about, we will be following up with those individuals to ask those clarifying questions so that we can determine if there's any changes we need to make in the future. We also created some regulations to attach to this process so that individuals can know what the expectations are. And included in that process, we have put in how candidates should be recommended, the evaluation criteria, performance evaluation, and the contractual obligations. We still, have room to critique that process, but we've established at least a foundational expectation for our school principals to use as a guide. For our academics positions, the principals, of course, would be the primary individual responsible for evaluating performance. And then for the individuals in sports, our student activities director will partner with the principal or with the designee to make determinations when it comes to staffing and evaluating the performance. The criteria that we use for assessing the stipends is listed over on your right side. I won't read through them in its entirety, but these are things that the committee felt that was important to the consideration process when we determined the placement on the tiers. For a feedback period, our internal stakeholders were allowed an opportunity to review and submit any feedback to the updated job descriptions that were created. We also took the feedback that we had from the previous year when we took out the survey, and those are items that we will use in consideration for tweaking those so we can ensure that the job description best reflects what the job or the role is meant to do. Prior to the stipend agreements being issued, which are typically issued between September and October each year, but prior to that, we will issue a profile sheet to individuals just so that they can know what their new rate is for 2025. And that pretty much concludes my presentation. I know that there may be some questions that you may have, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to ask those questions, but I do want to make sure that I give credit and my sincere thanks to the individuals that were on the stipends committee because I know that it was not an easy process, and we had a variety of feedback that was shared at the table, and I truly know that we have individuals here in the county that care about the work that they do and also care about our students. So we want to make sure that we do the best things that we can and also keep in mind the future as well for how we will be able to compensate. So are there any questions at this time?
I just wanted to make sure I understood something you said.
Yes, ma'am.
If someone is currently making more than what they would make under the new tier, they would be frozen at where they are.
Correct.
Until that tier catches up to them.
Correct.
Okay.
I would like to say that I appreciate the fact that we are rewarding longevity. There are places that they can go up on the tier because they have stayed as a volleyball coach or a senior class sponsor or whatever the position is. So that encourages the longevity and stability. And I appreciate us and loyalty.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's a factor. And some of the historical background on this, one of the reasons that we need to look at it is because I'm so thankful that in recent years, there have been increases in teacher pay and teacher, the plan. And that's a great thing, but what we were doing, we were paying coaches based on how many years they coached on the teacher scale. So if they coached 10 years and they would be at a percentage of a 10-year teacher, even if they had taught 15 years, but they'd only coached 10. So the fact that we are now in a position to start paying teachers more a living wage is wonderful. But we wouldn't be able to keep up with it if we kept doing it on the other end. So that was one of the pushes that why we had to look at it. So, and I appreciate your work, and I am one of the ones who was excited that we were paying people more than other people around us, and it had allowed us over the years to attract staff sometimes. We
Yes.
weren't paying as high in the teacher pot, but we were paying higher in the volleyball coach pot. So we got a teacher to coach volleyball.
And to this day, I do still think it's a driving factor in individuals deciding to come here. I remember a recent situation with an individual that was teaching in Chesterfield. So we know their scale is different than ours. However, they desired to work here in the county, had ties to the county, also wanted to coach as well. And when we were able to add that piece to the conversation, that inclined them to want to accept the position. So I do realize that it makes a difference, absolutely, for a unique situation.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moss was also very pivotal in helping us be able to bring this project to fruition. So I also want to personally thank you for your support too.
We started with 32 theaters and worked it down to 14.
That's amazing.
So we do need to, we need a motion to approve the new scale or the new approach. And of course, as we work through this, the new structure, as we work through this, if we find hiccups or places that we need to adjust, we'll go back and look at it again.
Absolutely. And one thing I did forget to mention is that in our regulations, we have the process for evaluating new requests, modifications. That will be done in alignment with our budget cycle. So anyone that feels that we need to take a look at theirs, they definitely have an opportunity to do that. We'll be updating our new position request form so that it will allow them to be able to put those details that we would need to evaluate their position on the form. That way we can do it consistently every year and also line it up with what funding sources we have available so that we're making those decisions in prudence as we move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chairperson, I move that we accept the stipend study recommendations.
I need a second.
Second?
We have a motion and a second, and Mr. Walker will be abstaining because he is a coach. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work. We're now looking at the 2025 amended budget.
Yeah, so, I was getting ready just to walk around. I'm beginning to think I'm considered to be the closer because it always seems like I'm always the last thing before something important like a celebration or dinner or something like that. So I'm going to try to make this as painless as possible. They say good things always, come to those who wait. So we do have some great news for everyone this evening. I am going to be presenting to you the amended budget. We were very optimistic when we brought you the budget for adoption back in April, that we would be getting good news from the General Assembly, and we certainly have. And so I'm here to present to you the priorities that we've been able to put into the new amended budget and what it's going to mean for our staff and our students. I just want to start by saying that I know that you all saw this, but we had 320 seniors who walked across the stage. It was certainly an amazing celebration.
We started the year saying we were going to get 320 young people across the stage, and we got 320 young people across the stage. That is unbelievable. Yes, indeed. And I really want to give kudos to the high school team and the work that Sharon Gibbs has been doing for us since we started that. Yes. Yes, it's really taken a village, but I just want to make sure that we say that at every opportunity because it has been quite an undertaking. But our work doesn't finish the day they walk across that stage, and so we always talk about what keeps us up at night, and what keeps me up at night is what happened the day after, right? And so I think that part of our mission is not only to get them across that stage, but to think about what happens next. And I think what you've heard this evening with the literacy plan and the work inside of our grants are things that are going to ensure that our young people have lots of choices when they walk across that stage. And that's really what our ultimate goal is. So when the new revenue came out from the state, it came to us about $2.7 million in additional monies than we first reported back to you from the governor's budget, which was really quite exciting for us, right? So to show you our revenue, you know that we're not getting any additional funds in the county transfer this year. Our local did not change, but the state revenue didn't change. It did change by $2.7 million. With this new funding, we did see a decrease of $346,000 in sales tax. Christy and I did talk about that. I was like, because it seems like in the last couple of budget cycles, they can't seem to get it as close as they used to get it for us in their projections, and we're not quite certain why that is. But we did end up with $2.4 million in an effort to be able to look at all the priorities that we had and come back to you with an amended budget this evening. And what I'm going to show to you is the priorities that we took from what you shared with us, that were things that were important to you as a school board and things that have been presented to us, things that we know that will help to continue to move us forward as a school district. And we were able to put those under our priorities from our comprehensive plan. So I put them under student success, caring culture, exemplary staff, and resource stewardship. So we'll start with student success, and I always say, you say the most important things first. So we're going to start by talking about compensation. We know that smart people can and do work anywhere, just like great coaches can and do work anywhere. So I know that it was a priority of this board to make certain that compensation was there for our employees. We started, the adopted budget was at 3% increase. We were able to build in an additional 2% pay increase for all staff. So it will be a 5% increase for all staff. That would be all teachers, all bus drivers, everyone on the pay plan, all the other staff members. So that's a total of 5% increase. So the Human Resources Department is already working on amendments, I believe, to the contracts. And we know that the teacher contracts, I think, will go out tomorrow. Because I know they'll be very anxious. They're probably already got their calculators out trying to figure out, what's that 5% going to mean for me? We are also adding 2 additional counselors at the elementary level. One of the things we also heard was about the social emotional supports of our young people. So at our 2 largest elementary schools at Southside and at Sutherland, we are adding an additional elementary counselor to assist with the work in those 2 schools. We're very excited about that. We're also adding an elementary physical education teacher so that at, once again, our 2 largest schools, we will have 2 physical education teachers at Sutherland and 2 physical education teachers full-time at Southside. Presently, they have been kind of splitting classes, and we had one person that was traveling between the 2 schools, and this will allow them not to have to split the classes anymore, but will also allow for more common planning time for teachers, which is very, very important, especially with all the work that we've just talked about with the literacy plan. Yes. I know that's something you've been working on for a long time. It might make you want to come back. You might want to rescind your retirement. How about that? Okay. We are also, the Rwanni board did, one of the barriers at Rwanni Technical has been about the fees of young people. And sometimes kids don't take those courses because it's a cost a lot of money for kids to take the cosmetology classes or take the welding class or the carpentry classes. So the Rwani board has agreed this year to pay all fees for any of our young people that are going to be attending Rwani Technical. Right now, we do have the highest number of students that go to Rwani, which I'm very excited about. I do think that's going to continue to grow, but we're going to pay all fees for any student that will attend Rwani this upcoming
You're
school
saying the
year.
Rwanti board is paying it, but
Yes.
we're paying the Rwanti board.
Well, we're paying the Rwani board, but that's, we've got to cover it in our budget. But that is a huge barrier for our young people. When you can take those barriers away, I think we're going to see an increase in the number of young people that would take advantage of that. The great thing about that too is that, you know, some of that equipment is equipment that helps them to start off in businesses after they leave us. So it's very exciting. We are adding a actual teacher. We did have we have two administrative positions over at Encompass now, but we wanted to add, we had a paraprofessional there. We felt it was very important to bring a content teacher there. So we are going to add an actual teacher to Encompass, which will allow us to expand offerings there. And so one of the things would be that everything would not necessarily have to be on the computer, but so we're going to bring a third person over to Encompass. We'll be able to serve more young people in the alternative setting, which we're very excited about that as well. It is important about, as Dr. Clay said, it's important about who stands in front of our young people. And it is important about who stands in front of our young people on days when our teachers need to be out of the building. So we do need to increase the cost. We have seen an increase in the cost over the years, so we need to make sure that we can cover that and make sure that we have the right people in front of our students when our teachers are unable to be here. All the work that you heard about the literacy plan and about the new standards is going to require a great amount of curriculum writing. That's been going on all this week and last week. There have been a lot of people up here. Next week and the week after that. So we did have to put monies in the budget in order to compensate our teachers who are giving up their summer to help us to put that curriculum together. We do have a number of young people who are on homebound services, and we want to make sure that we're able to continue to provide that service. So we did have to increase those costs. And we have a lot of technology in our building, and we do need to replace some of the Promethean boards. And so this will allow us to about $132,000 worth of changing out some Promethean boards that are long overdue in our classroom. So under caring culture, once again, you put the most important thing first. You as a board said that you wanted to make certain that you covered the health insurance increase, which was going to be 4.5% that we were having to push out to our employees. And so we are going to be able to cover the costs associated with all health insurance for employees. And so none of that will be pushed out to the employees. I know that's very exciting as well. So they're also they're figuring that calculation out too, that's not going to be taken out of their paychecks. We are going to update our badge system. So there are some security things that we're working on, and we're going to still use the same company, but we're going to update some of the equipment that we're using, do some work with our school security cameras. You already heard about the behavior specialist. I think that's very important because it is going to allow for some district-wide training with a person that's going to be have a very diverse, and I like what Ms. Valentine said about having that clinical background to bring us the tools that we need in order to work with some of our more challenging and most vulnerable children. And then school-based vehicles, it seems like it shouldn't be under caring culture, but this is why it is there. So one of the things we've already put together is the families where we have the chronic absenteeism that's happening. So we already know which families that we already need to provide supports to. Our goal is to put a vehicle at every school so that we can do home visits. And so what we're going to be doing this summer is going out to the homes, kind of like what you talked about, and meeting with families and figuring out what is it that they need, what supports do they need, what's getting in the way, how can we help to get the kids to school on a regular basis. And so the vehicles are going to help the schools to do that work. Okay, under exemplary staff, you know that we've moved to a new custodial services, and you'll see that increase in the next priority. But we are having a maintenance tech 1 at each school, and that is one of the employees person that is employed by us, who will help to oversee some of the work that would have been turned into a system that would have been done by our maintenance team, but they're going to be actually housed in each one of our schools. So we're adding an additional one. We took the existing positions that we had at Midway so we could deploy them out. And now every school will have their own maintenance tech one that will be employed by Dinwiddie County Public Schools. We're also adding a technology information specialist. I say adding, was a position we previously had in the budget. Sometimes we continue to add a lot of technology, but then we kept taking away the technology people. We do need to have people to help us with that work. And so I know Mr. Ampey will be really happy when he comes back from vacation to know that that position is reoccurred in the budget. You just heard the presentation about staff stipends, and so we need to make sure that we can cover the cost of those stipends in our budget. There is money in there for employee training, and also money in there. We will have 2 brand-new principals, and we would like to continue. There's a small amount of money in there to continue with one of our retired principals to continue to operate as a leadership coach for us. And then finally, under resource stewardship, the contracted custodial services. Once again, this is now going to be at all of our schools and also at including Historic Southside. I'm very pleased with the services that they're going to be able to provide. I've been very impressed with their professionalism thus far and the plan that they have for all of our schools. They said we won't even recognize some of them when we come back in the fall. I'm very, very excited. They've already been out to meet with the principals, and I've already talked about they were here on site several days to hire people, and so I'm very excited about the work that they're going to be doing for us. Because, I think it's important that our buildings are aging, but I think it's important that we take care of them, and sometimes, people don't get as far as the lobby, so we want to make sure that they look how they should look, and that our teachers and our staff and our students have great places to come to school every day. We did need to add money for overtime hours, primarily for transportations, a lot of trips and things like that. We want to make sure that's covered in there. Terminal pay, we typically do not have that in our budget. What terminal pay is when we have people that leave us after many, many years, and they have, have a lot of vacation days or a lot of sick leave, and we have to pay that out. This year we had quite a bit. When you have people that retire after 47 years, they carry with them a lot of days, right? So we just said we need to build that into a budget to make sure that we're not trying to just count on there being money at the end of the budget season. So we just built that into the budget since we received this additional funds. There is some work to be done at Sutherland at the high school with technology. And then we're providing some materials and supplies for the schools that have been requested during the budget process as well. All right, so just to give you a sense of where this is in the school operating budget, what all the expenses are, and what percentage of the expenses, it's $61.1 million. You see 70% of that is in the instructional part of it, and then 12.6% of it is in maintenance, and then transportation, technology, and then administration and attendance and health. So this is how we're spending the money for this upcoming year of the $61.1 million. This shows you where all the revenue is coming from, all of our total revenue. 80% of it is in the school operating fund, which we just talked about. And you see the debt service, our capital projects, our grants, which you heard some of that this evening. The CARES, this will be the last time I believe you'll see CARES in the budget. We hope so. Yes, CARES money is coming to an end, and so I believe this might be the last budget cycle that you'll see anything to do with CARES. That's a blessing, and maybe not so. But yes, school nutrition is there, and also our textbook revenue as well. And then here's how we'll be spending this money for the upcoming school year, and this is the entire budget. And you see we have quite a bit of work to do there with the textbook. We have some work at the middle school level, which you heard. Once again, grants, lots of capital projects, lots of big projects still in there. And this is just a summary of all of our funds for the fiscal year 2025. The projected beginning balance is $9.3 million. A lot of that's in grant funds and projects, capital projects that we're working on. We do anticipate a total revenue of $75.9 million. We do plan to expend the $81.3 million with an ending balance of $4 million. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or we can, answer any questions, or expand on anything you'd like, or.
So the additional 2.5 million from the state, that will be expected, or that will be continuing? That's not something that we would be afraid that they wouldn't give
Yes.
to us next time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and, yes, you can come. I should have had you up here. Come on. I need a Chuck Moss. Come on. That's right, that's right. We all need a Chuck Moss.
Yeah, this is true.
Yes.
So the majority of the 2.4 million that in additional funding is in at-risk funding, which was a big priority with the General Assembly this year. And as we know it right now, as we've been told, there's a plan for that to continue. But with anything, that the state can change, how they fund things at any time. But I would say that right now that we can count on those funds for, certainly some time coming. In addition, their focus is, on at-risk children and at-risk, students. So certainly we hope to continue to receive that, yes.
Thank you.
That's a great question.
It is, and that's why we were really careful, because anytime you're talking about compensation, you want to be careful about that, because you want to be able to support it in the next budget cycle and not have to rely upon the county to do that, so.
Yes, and then any additional monies we received in basic aid we didn't, our sales tax is different, but it rolls over and the 3% we receive for compensation, that rolls over into basic aid and continues on in our funding stream, so, yes.
Thank you. Other questions about the budget? Anyone? We're happy about the 2.4.
We are very
Yes,
happy.
we were very excited.
Thank you.
And I'm glad to see that we can add this additional staff that
Yes.
we've talked about for so long. And
We
now we
have.
are able to get somebody, a teacher for that. And I'm very happy about
Yes.
that.
We have.
We need to
Yes,
approve
we
the
do.
changes, so we'll
Yes.
need a motion and a second for accepting the amended budget.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the amended budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And the budget passes. Thank you so much. Ms. Golson, is there new business that you have? Anybody on the board have new business? Nope. We do have a policy, IBEA-GAB regulations. Is that from you?
That's gonna be Tony Wynn, I will be her backup singer as well.
Well, see, everybody needs Chuck Moss.
Mr. Moss, don't touch anything back there.
I'll be back up here.
I didn't realize she was-
I'm tag teaming for
Okay.
a couple of different departments. So good evening, everyone.
Good
Good evening.
And hopefully I won't believe you this time, because we've been here for a little bit.
Yeah.
So as you all are more than likely aware, there has been an increased focus and increased momentum with artificial intelligence, or AI, as well as generative AI, which is just a form of artificial intelligence where it creates new content. It can be new text, new images, but based on the prompts that you give it information. So you have to type something for it to actually generate something. And an effort.
I'm sorry, but like, if you heard of ChatGPT, that's the most commonly talked about one, but there are literally dozens.
Yeah.
So in an effort to prepare our staff, our students, our parents, and just our community at whole, we as a division have been participating in a number of different workshops, different events throughout this past school year to gain more information, to educate ourselves so we can educate others. One of those such workshops that we attended was a generative AI workshop series that was held at Longwood University, led by a consultant by the name of Adam Gary. And this workshop series was facilitated by the SBRTC Consortium, of which we are a member division. So we had a division-wide team of 10 members, I believe it was.
Yes.
And it was comprised of a high school English teacher, a middle school English teacher, the two of us, the director of innovation and development, our director of secondary education, of course, our director of technology, and three of our innovation specialists, one at the high school level, one at the middle school level, and one at the elementary school level. Thank you. So as a result of that workshop series, I believe it was seven. Was it seven that we actually had? I think it was seven.
Right.
Individual.
There were 4 that we went to as a group, and then there were 3 additional that members went to.
Right. And we also had some time that we worked here within our division team before we went back to like the last ones. And when I say workshops, these were working sessions. It wasn't just sitting and soaking in information. No, he presented information and he gave time for us to talk within our team. We also had an opportunity to talk within other school divisions that participated within their teams and share and care. So it was truly a
And we
working
generated
session.
the database of shared resources, so we will always have access to what they're doing. But there's, and the pace at which this is happening, Ms. Grant alluded to, we went to lunch, when we came back, something had changed, and he had to go back to what he already been talking about. And that really spoke to how desperately we need to get ahead of some of this.
Yes. So some of the purposes that were established at this series, of course, a vision for generative AI, policy implications, whether we needed to amend policies or add regulations, some of which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Resources to support the teaching and learning using generative AI, and a framework for the ethical use. Because as we all know, there are ethical ways of using things and not so. But we're trying to focus on ethical and present that to like our staff, our students, our teachers, because we're preparing, and our community as a whole, because we're preparing everyone for the future. And AI is the future. It's the present, and it's going to continue into the future. As an outcome of the workshop series, we were able to create a number of documents. And like Mr. Moss said, we have a resource database of documents that we created, documents that were shared with us from other school divisions, documents that the consultant himself had created that he was leaving as resources for us to access. And he's not taking away that access. He's leaving it because he understands, like we do, as anything with technology, it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. And so we have to constantly also evolve with it to adapt to whatever is new. We also came up with a professional development plan. So Betty Spires, our Director of Innovation and Development, had already begun meeting with our innovation specialists earlier this year because we were just trying to get ahead, like Mr. Moss said, and get in front of everything. So as a result of this workshop series, they were able to dig in even deeper and create some trainings for our administrators, which will happen this summer, for our teachers, which will begin at DCPS, but will continue throughout the year, and then training as well for our students. Ms. Woolfolk and myself actually did a training for parents at our last Teen Expo. And we did a little overview session for parents and introduced them to some tools and let them have a little bit of fun, but to also prepare them for what is coming. Some of the attachments to our agenda item, I know they look like a lot. There are 8 attachments. The first one actually is our existing policy, which there are no changes being made to our existing acceptable computer use policy. We are asking to add some regulations. And so the next 7 attachments are actually the regulations that we developed during this workshop series. The first one being this one, and the next one right behind it actually are pretty much duplicate documents with a few changes. One is designed for the employee, one is designed for the student. And so all of the language pretty much mirrors itself. What's highlighted are the pieces that we would like to change. So we're taking out some of the old language that was in this and adding you know, what's more relevant to us today, such as the addition of artificial intelligence. So if we scroll on down, you'll see a couple of more areas where we would like to add that as part of our regulation. So attachment number 2 and attachment number 3, as I stated, they mirror one another. One is just more focused on the student and one is the employee. I believe it's attachment 4. Yes. So the guiding principles document. This is what we would like to eventually have posted on our website and possibly little snippets on some of our other social media sites. And is pretty much establishing what are our guiding principles, you know, based on our mission, based on our vision, based on our goals, our core values. What are our guiding principles with the addition of AI into our curriculum and into our, you know, daily system of support, you know, not just daily systems. So this was a document that we created during that workshop series, and we went back and forth. We added pieces, we took out pieces, and then we brought pieces back. But this is that document that resulted from that work. The next document is the secondary student AI agreement. And so this is what would be shared with students and their parents. And it's pretty much stating, explaining about AI and how we will use it here at Dinwiddie County Public Schools, how we are expecting them to use it, our expectations for them. And it does require a signature. It's almost like a permission document, per se.
Yeah.
The next one is a secondary academic integrity statement, which we are envisioning to become a poster that will be displayed in our buildings, in our classrooms, everywhere that we have students and staff. But it's academic integrity statement for our secondary students. And we also have one for the elementary students, but it's worded a little different because, you know,
And it's visual too.
Yes, and it's visual as well.
And by the way, all the documents you're seeing here, we've also been talking about making sure they're appropriately translated and available to all of our stakeholders.
So the next one is the elementary academic integrity statement. So if you look at it, it says pretty much the same thing as the secondary, but it's in different language. So it's a little less complex for our younger learners. And the very last document is the visual part. And both this one and the previous document, we also envision as posters.
And just to give you a snippet of what the human part of using generative AI is, when we initially asked AI to develop a poster like this for us, it did so, but with no diversity. And that was important to us. So we actually tasked the people with going and making sure that we were being diverse in our representation in the poster. So again, we're not trying to prevent AI from being in our schools. We're just trying to make sure it's being used correctly.
When the training for teachers, is the training, in addition to explaining what it is and what it can do, will it be to teach teachers how they can incorporate it into planning and preparation and things like that?
Yes. And it will have ongoing sessions, so it's not going to be a one and done.
Right.
So throughout the year, we'll keep refreshing them, and as we learn more and more information becomes available to us, we'll be sharing that as well.
And I envision that during those developments, we're going to be able to say, have any of you used this before? And so people in the audience will have stories where they've used this to generate a quiz or something like this. While we were at the session, I said, US 4.1 5-question quiz, and boom, it gave me that in seconds. And then I said, I don't like question 2. It replaced it
Yes.
with a new one. So we're going to let teachers know how this can streamline their instruction. But again, they have to make sure they're looking at what's coming out. Because providing something that AI generated without looking at it is like sharing a video clip before you watch it. It's, you don't know what's there. You got to make sure that you.
And doesn't this also allow students, I mean, I was thinking about that they could actually take someone's likeness and voice and create whatever they want and post. I mean, I just want to make sure we're teaching.
Well, and that's why bullying is in there.
I was
Because,
hoping we could go back to that.
Yeah.
I think that was the first regulation thing.
Okay.
I wanted to hear more about the bullying
Yeah.
thing,
And
because that's one of my
you
biggest
can do-
concerns with
Because
it.
you can do that, right? Like
right. In fact, there's a principal who their image and likeness was used by a teacher in their division, and it had them saying some very inflammatory statements.
Right.
And so the bullying part of it is it's not about the bullying that the physical bullying, but how AI specifically can be used
Right.
and bullying, and just like that
Yeah.
is what So
Because
just
you
to
all
say,
talk in these meetings, and so your voice is out
Sure.
there,
Right.
right? So people can take your voice, your likeness,
Right.
and say anything by
Well,
putting all that together.
there are well-known cases of celebrities who have been the victim of this.
absolutely.
So the question I have about this is, this policy, is this regarding only AI as it's used within the parameters of the classroom? Or, because, I mean, there's a fine line, we deal with it with social media already.
Right.
There's a fine line between what they do on the school grounds versus
Right.
what are we responsible to govern when they're at home.
And that's a question we've grappled with for decades.
Yeah.
And as a building administrator, I can tell you that anything that happens outside of school that then affects the way school operates, we deal with it as a
Okay.
school-based issue. So the bullying, because years ago, the weekend was a cooling off period. Now it's not.
Right.
Now the weekend is social media, and everybody comes in Monday with guns. They're going to know that we are able to determine if something is not legitimate,
Right.
and that they will face consequences for creating something through AI,
Right.
which disparages the character of someone else.
But could also be bigger than just the code of conduct, or that could also have legal ramifications.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know,
I personally I applaud you guys for, there exists a temptation to avoid something that you don't understand, or to something that has the potential to be used for harm. As a preacher and studying the history of the church in America, there was a time when churches avoided the medium of television because that's the devil box over there. But then one day, thank the Lord, someone saw this and said, the Old Testament story of Joseph, God took what the enemy intended for harm and used it for good. I think it's great that we're not just hiding from it. There's good that can come from this, but we also have to be careful with it. So I applaud what you got. I had no clue this was happening. I'm really glad it is. So thank you guys for putting that work.
Yeah, I would add that on top of that, I mean, if there's any way, I know you mentioned that you'll be rolling this out, development with teachers, and kind of, having that conversation. If there's any way that I could be involved in that, I'd be more than happy to. AI is something that I am very well versed in. It's something I use very, very often, whether it's in the workplace, outside of work, political organizing even. I remember last year when I had been campaigning, running for school board, I always make sure every speech that I write, I always do it on my own. But when it came to things that I put on Facebook, for example, I went to, when I talked about like platforms and like issues that I want to talk about, it was difficult for me to have that conversation with children. So like, I can have a conversation all day, any day with someone 20 and up about like teachers unions. But how do I talk to, a 12-year-old about that? And so I would then take the things that I wrote out, put them into ChatGPT and say, okay, well, write this so that it's easy to read for a child. And I would send it out to parents, and I'd be like, hey, let me know what your student thinks about this. Let me know what your grandchild thinks about that. So definitely being able to use it, and especially with really strong parameters and regulations, is going to be a huge benefit. I know even, I think it was sometime earlier this year, we had, trying to think of his last name. His last name is Cherry. Can't remember his first name, but it was a man that works in another school system near us. And he had mentioned using AI, even with parenting. Like
Right.
how do you communicate without anger? Okay, well let me put something into Chat GPT and figure it out. So yeah, if there's any way that I can get involved, I'd be more than happy to because again, it's something I've got experience with and it's something I use almost on a daily. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tag.
And right now they're on version 4 of ChatGPT. Version 5 is ready to roll out, which is why right now they're giving all the Chat 4 stuff for free because they want you to get hooked on it, and then
Yes.
suddenly there are features you won't be able to access. So,
It is very addicting.
and we require no action. We just want to make sure that we were keeping you informed of the actions of the group.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for the information. Do we have citizen comments, Ms. Golson? We do not. The board comments, we'll start on your end. Ms. Pearson, or anything
No,
you need to
not
add?
at this time.
Yes. Mr. Walker?
Just the thought crossed my mind. I've been thrilled about it. It was initially brought up in the consolidated grant presentation, and then again in the budget, the hiring of a behavioral specialist, and I'm thrilled about that. I would like though, and maybe this isn't a comment, but I'm thinking of it now. I would love for us to maybe. I know this year we've talked about the issue of when budgets change or when grants run out. Sometimes those positions become questioned whether or not they'll continue. If there were any way, I'm excited to see that position, come to fruition, and evolve as it meets the needs of our school system. But if there's any way we could measure the success of that position, because if we come to a place where we have to decide if we want to continue that, it would be great for us to be able to show what that position has produced for us. But there's a lot of stuff that's been presented today that I'm really thrilled to see. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Benjamin? Any comments?
This has been a long meeting, and it's been a lot, and I have so much information going either way, but you know what I really, the literacy plan, I'm really excited about that coming into play, and also getting the students excited. They're excited when they get a book, and I think Ms. Powell mentioned they're gonna get a book a month or something like that.
The Dolly Parton Project.
Ms. Brooks.
Miss Brooks.
Yeah.
You mentioned they'll get, and they're always excited about getting the book now. I think we'll get them to read the book.
Yeah.
But I think that is a good incentive coming from that program.
And did you see that was ages 0 to 5? So the goal for Ms. Brooks and Ms. Valentine, they're going to try to find when children are born, so we can make the connection with the families when the children are born.
That's wonderful, and that's a great idea. I like that idea. And Dr. Weston, what can I say about the budget?
I know, it's exciting.
Exciting.
Yes, it's very
and thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, all really great stuff that was presented. I appreciate working not only just the board, but just working with everyone that makes things function. I feel like sometimes our role sometimes can be limited to just voting yes or no on a lot of the stuff that is possible because of your hard work. So I'm really, really appreciative of that, and I'm appreciative of hard work that's also coupled with being willing to actually think through these things, ask questions, be critical, be self-critical as well. So I think we saw a lot of that today with the literacy plan and the budget, just being able to say, okay, we can't just accept things superficially, being able to actually dig into them and be open to change and whatnot. I think it's a sign of a healthy system that we are all making possible. So really thankful for that. One thing that I was going to say as far as the budget is concerned, that additional funding that we're receiving from the state, of course, is really only made possible by people in the community that are willing to go to the General Assembly, talk to their delegate, talk to their state senator, even talk to the governor, lieutenant governor if they have that access. So I kind of just use that to kind of reassure everyone of the point that we really have to be involved with the community and step outside of the four walls of the school board office, step outside the four walls of the classroom. That's always been my approach. Just philosophically and politically is that you have to really work with the community. It's not just that one person voting yes or no to change things. And so I'm excited for even when next year the General Assembly goes into session, showing up to the Capitol doorsteps and, really trying to advocate for more things because we see, the product. We see that a yes or no vote at the General Assembly can really impact, a child's education and, of course, their life outcome. And so I say that as a segue into also saying that, again, as Ed mentioned in the last school board meeting, that I would be going door to door this summer to talk to parents and families and see, what resources they need. I don't want to limit myself to just, going to their doorstep every 4 years to say, vote for me. I wanted to actually serve at the doorstep, say, okay, you don't have to email me, you don't have to call me. I'm going to email you, I'm going to call you, I'm going to show up to whatever your address is and help out. And so if any of you all here, are even interested in that, I know Dr. Weston has mentioned she'd be interested in tagging along. If I'm in your area, I'll be starting in my district, of course, North Dinwiddie and West Petersburg. But once I branch out into even these more rural parts of the community, it's going to be kind of difficult as one person to just go to one house and then a mile down is the next house. So if you guys are interested in tagging along and just being a little bit more hands-on in that regard, I think the community is really wanting that. They'll really appreciate it. And I think we're going to see a lot of things come out of that wouldn't be made possible if we just limited ourselves to voting yes or no in our seats. So thank you.
And there's an incredible amount of information that comes to us regularly, things to digest, things to learn about, things to ask questions about. So a lot of times we may be getting the yes and no votes here, and yet there's a whole lot of that went into it behind the scenes. And the teams that are working on these things to present to us are, we appreciate the fact that you are delving into this mammoth amount of information and regulations. And, we do have to have the state literacy plan because it's required by the state, but we're also making it our own and trying to do whatever we can locally to make it what we need here in Dinwiddie County. So I do appreciate that. Dr. Weston?
There has been a lot of information presented tonight, and I just think we're very fortunate to be able to work alongside people who care about the right work. And so I'm just very appreciative of all the smart things we've heard today. And I just would also like to say that Dr. Clay and I had recently had an opportunity, I guess in the last couple of weeks, to participate or to attend the Project Search graduation. And 4 of our young people who had left the high school were finishing up over there at Fort Greg Adams. Is that right? So it was really wonderful when you think about what happens after graduation. This is one of the opportunities that our young people, our exceptional education students have to participate. And Dr. Pelt was there as well. And it was just really a very fulfilling moment to participate in that after we had all this success with our graduation here, to watch them and to listen to them talk about their job prospects. So it was just a very exciting moment for us.
Thank you. If there's no other comments or input, we will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Madam Chairperson, I move that we adjourn.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you for hanging in here with us, and thank you for all that you're doing behind the scenes. And good night.